Subtitling. Zweites Deutsches Fernsehen. January 11, 2026. We are in the fourth year day, 322, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. A warm welcome, I greet you, to the Daily Situation Report. In today's report, we see how long this war has actually been going on. You don't feel it as much as before, but we'll return to that in the report soon. Among other things, we will also see a new Russian drone, namely the Geran-5, which is an advancement of the previous licensed replica drones of the Iranian Shahed 106. The Russians made the Geran-2 their licensed copy. Did they ever add a jet engine to it? We'll cover the Geran-3 and the new Geran-5 in the Situation Report. And we are seeing further strikes against important facilities deep in the Russian hinterland, as well as much more. So, you already heard about it in the intro? Today marks day 1418 of the full-scale invasion, now surpassing the Soviet Union's involvement in World War II. World War II from June 1941 to May 1945, fighting against the German Reich. The comparison is so devastating because it breaks the core of Russian propaganda back then at the end of that period. Berlin? Today, after more than 3 years of special operations, reality has set in. A difficult, hard-won advance of a few kilometers in Donbass, with heavy personnel and equipment losses. We're not the only ones who see it this way. Many Russian bloggers do as well. As you can see here on the screen, they're refuting old slogans because they simply haven't succeeded. The second point is the operational statement behind the number. If you wage war for 1,418 days, and the result at the front is essentially a very limited territorial gain, then that's not the image of an army making an unstoppable advance, but rather of a system that only trades land through extreme attrition. That's exactly why the way we calculate losses per square kilometer sounds so harsh. It expresses that the price for every kilometer of front movement has now become grotesquely high because the modern battlefield, drone reconnaissance, first-person view mine belts, artillery attacks, and so on, has turned open areas into a predictable mechanism of attrition. It's amazing how long this war has lasted. From Donetsk to Pokrovsk, and I'm specifically counting from Donetsk to Pokrovsk here, since this war has actually been going on for over 10 years already, and the city of Donetsk was largely controlled by pro-Russian troops. That's why from Donetsk to Pokrovsk it was about 60 kilometers. With 1.2 million losses from Moscow to Berlin, it's 1,615 kilometers as the crow flies. With about 13 million losses, that's 20,000 per kilometer versus 8,000 per kilometer. Of course you could say that about World War II now, but that wouldn't be fair because you can't and shouldn't compare them directly. As I said before, the Russian army is not the same as the old Red Army, even though many pieces of equipment and doctrines have largely remained the same. But in order to wage a war and motivate the soldiers, you need the right circumstances. Back then, the Soviet Union was attacked by the Wehrmacht. The Soviet people were deeply affected by this war, and the Wehrmacht made many territorial gains, destroying many places and families in the process. When you're attacked, your motivation to resist and defeat the enemy is much stronger than when you're the invader and unsure of your purpose. Why do we see it that way in this war as well? Most Russian soldiers aren't really in this war because they find the Russian war aims, which the Kremlin has set and still hasn't achieved, so incredibly important and motivating. But because they are promised extremely high payments, the motivation would much more likely be to stay alive as long as possible and maybe not be sent so far to the front lines initially just to even receive the first payments, as we see with these Russian soldiers. Do you really think any of them are there because they truly believe Russian values and war aims are so important they're worth enforcing with their lives? Or does a bonus payment just seem much more lucrative? I think you can answer that question for yourself. Russian soldiers have been able to make progress in Vovchansk and advance south again because at the level of the blue pin, Artillery 57. The brigade started shelling Russian positions there, so they could at least get that far. We see the same situation at the green pin near the dachas, where the 57th Brigade's artillery also operated. That's why we have a shift here. a bit further south, and thus also a division of the city. Of course, this will make it much more difficult for the Ukrainians to bring the units back together. The Ukrainian military intelligence reports the first use of a new Russian drone, the Geran-5, against Ukraine, and publishes pictures of wreckage parts. According to HOR, these new drones are significantly larger than the previous Geran variants, with a length of about 6 meters and a wingspan of 5 meters. And it also carries a warhead of around 90 kilos, with a stated range of about 1,000 kilometers. Notable features include the 12-channel Kometa satellite navigation system, a Raspberry-based tracker with 3 G4G modems, and a Telefly-type jet engine. It's similar to the Geran-3s, but has higher thrust. The GOR emphasizes a clear structural similarity to the Iranian Kara drone and mentions 2 potential next steps: launching from aircraft such as a Su-25 to change range and profile and to reduce operational costs, and even the option to potentially equip the Geran-5 with R-73 air-to-air missiles in the future to threaten Ukrainian aircraft. We should take a closer look at that soon. Maybe we'll see more of the drones. Yesterday, we briefly talked about the health condition of the Chechen leader Kadyrov. There's something new about that now. The Ukrainian intelligence service reports that he is suffering from kidney failure. If we think back, we know that there have been several incidents in recent years where this illness was attributed to him, especially when he was absent for a while. The last time, he reappeared on his own after a few days and filmed himself taking a walk to calm down the rumor mill, even though he didn't always look particularly well while doing so. Let's see what time will tell. Ukrainian special forces report another strike on Russian Caspian Sea oil platforms, again targeting Lugoil Corporation infrastructure. Ukraine is once again showing that Russian energy facilities, even far from the immediate front lines, are not automatically safe. The impact of such attacks is not only in the direct damage, but also in the resulting costs: increased operational outages, expensive security measures, higher insurance and logistics costs, as well as growing pressure on Russia's energy and export chains. And what is also very important is the deal with the United States and Russia for further investment in exactly this kind of infrastructure. It could also become less and less lucrative for the Americans or for their investors if they see that these platforms have been attacked very often lately. Russia is forcing air defense and security forces to stretch further, requiring resources to move into previously rear areas. But what also needs to be said right away is that this attack also means the last attack wasn't successful enough, because these platforms were already attacked a few weeks ago. Speaking of air defense, according to Defense Express, the first prototypes of the new United States air defense system Tempest have reportedly been sent to Ukraine. However, this is just a media report, not an official confirmation. What can be said about the system itself? Tempest is manufactured by V2X, a highly mobile air defense system designed for both vehicle-mounted and trailer-mounted variants. Either shoot and scoot early, use it as a base or as a basis. Centralized static airfield protection. A prototype featured a radar suite and target acquisition integration, aiming to be cheaper than traditional systems, rapidly deployable, and built to withstand ongoing drone swarm stress. Personally, I'm not a fan of it, but I see the trailer version as one of the better systems, even though I generally don't like it that much. That's because, to me, it seems like it's quickly deployable but doesn't have much impact during a drone attack, especially if there's ever a larger swarm attack. I don't think just a few of these systems would be able to properly counter that. Of course, you have to keep in mind that you don't just rely on a single system, but that these work together with others in order to be as multi-layered as possible. Thanks to all subscribers, channel members, and the Algo crew, especially Lieutenant Colonel Renneke, Robert Ziller, Dietrich, Freddie, and Meyerhofer. Please subscribe, like, comment, and see you in the next report.